Here to talk some NBA, some Phoenix Suns with us. One of our favorites, ESPN NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joins us here on the Arizona Sports Line. Bobby, good morning.
Bobby.
How we doing, guys? Good.
Doing good. I mentioned it there. 21 games left. The Suns are on the outside looking in, and a lot of the talk locally and I think nationally too, as you're well aware, Bobby, has shifted from the Suns. Hey, can they wiggle their way into this field? And now the talk is, how do you wiggle out of this roster situation?
Yeah.
Where do you start in your analysis of what needs to happen moving forward?
Well, I think certainly for the now. I think they're 2-8 in their last 10, but they probably could still wiggle their way in based on what's happening in Dallas. But you have to worry about Portland, who's right behind you. So, if that's the goal to get into 10th and you don't control your pick, there's still time to do that. But you've got the toughest schedule left in the league here. So, I think big picture wise. I'm just starting to kind of outline some things for the offseason for their article. I think the first thing, and I know that a lot of it's going to be about Kevin, of course, as far as, with him on an expiring contract. He's probably the guy, if you're going to reset this roster or retool this roster, that's probably going to be the starting point here. I do think you kind of need a full audit of everything that goes on within that basketball operations department, whether it be, certainly within the coaching staff or in the front office and the players, and you can include ownership in there. The 4 different phases once the season ends, or maybe if you could start that right now. And you just got to figure out, how did it go so bad, right? How did it go from a team that was in the NBA finals to now, multiple coaches, certainly the ownership change. And now, and we're not even talking about getting swept in the first round. We're just talking about not even getting to the first round here. And I think that starts right there as far as a kind of a full audit as far as where you are and what you need to do. But of course, the talk and the talk's going to be Durant, of course, just because of that expiring contract. I don't see you recouping what you gave up to get him, which is fine. It's kind of like if you're going to buy a car, the value of the car is a lot different, 2 or 3 years ago than it was, at the time you bought it.
When you look at, and there's been some debate, and those are all really great points. I guess the big thing is they're looking, can we refit a title contending team or a really good team around Devin Booker and Bradley Beal? And I think the answer to that is largely dependent on what kind of haul you can get for Kevin Durant. Do you think that the playoffs have to kind of play out to set the market for KD? And do you side with, you're going to get a lot for KD, or do you think that age is going to keep teams from paying a premium?
I think to rewind, I guess we'll start with the value of KD and stuff. I think, listen, a lot of it he'll dictate as far as what you can get in value based on him willing to extend with that team. He can extend for, I think, 2 years, $120 million. If there's hesitancy, if there's a team out there that's willing to throw a lot at him or a lot at Phoenix and he's not willing to extend, then that's probably not going to be a deal that's going to happen. So I do think a lot of it will depend on if what you can, if Durant's commitment long term, 2 years long, with that team. I always say the playoffs are a huge indicator as far as what the market is, because there's always 1 or 2 teams or maybe multiple teams that will lose in the first round that feel like they're a Kevin Durant piece away from competing for a championship. I don't know who that is yet, and we won't know until we get through the first or second round here, whether it be if Houston loses in the first round and they say, you know what, we're going to accelerate this retool of our roster a little bit further down the road, and we're willing to make guys that we weren't willing to make available at the deadline now. We see it every year. The history has shown that here. So I don't think – and you don't know what the market is until we kind of get through until we probably get through the playoffs.
Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider, our guest here on Bickley and Marotta mornings. For a couple of months, we followed every bit of news coming out of Miami with Jimmy Butler, all the suspensions, all the stories that he wanted to get to Phoenix. We know what happened at the deadline. He ends up at Golden State, and the effects that he's had on that team, which to me, at a lot of times before the trade deadline, Bobby, looked dead in the water in Golden State. Are you at all surprised at the level of influence that he's had this early on that Warriors team?
No, because it was never about what Jimmy Butler could do on the court. It was about him, committing, whether it be in Miami or whatever new team he was going to. I mean, listen, we go through this a lot. I mean, history has shown us, that there are players that quit on teams, right? Like Jimmy Butler quit on Miami.
Yes.
Let's face it. And there'll be another player a year from now and 2 years from now here. And he got his way, and he got out of Miami, and he didn't get to Phoenix, but he got to Golden State. And if you remove all that from it, he's a heck of a player, right? Like he's an impact all-star level player, probably not top 10 or top 15, but you can see the impact he's had. I think they're 8-1 since they've gotten him. They're top 3 or top 4 in defensive efficiency. It's a high level. Now, the big thing is, like, what happens, in next year or the year after when he's going to be 36 and 37 years old. So I'm not surprised as far as what he could do on the court, because that was never the big issue. The big issue was a player that was basically holding out because Miami would not extend him.
I want to go back to the Suns for one last minute, Bobby, and I'm sure you saw the Crispy Haynes report about Mike Budenholzer sitting down with Devin Booker and saying, hey, man, I'd like you to tone it down a little bit, let the coach's voice kind of ring clearer and more loudly, and Devin was allegedly shocked. Both sort of kind of danced around it. They say their relationship is great. Are you surprised Mike Budenholzer hasn't had a better effect on this basketball team?
I am. I'm surprised. And listen, I know certainly there's been injuries to this roster. I'm surprised that they haven't been able to find some stability as far as it feels like Mike is trying to, give him credit. I mean, trying to, pull a rabbit out of the hat with different lineups and everything like that. Tyus starts, Tyus comes off the bench. The rookies play, the rookies don't play here. So I am surprised it hasn't worked out as well as it probably should have. And that's, listen, I know they went through Monty and they went through Frank, and, now they're on Mike and stuff. And that's part of it. When I said an internal audit of the basketball operations, that includes the head coach. Like if you're going to go in a soft rebuild, you have to figure out and I know you owe a lot of money to him, if he's part of what you're trying to do moving forward here. So I am surprised it hasn't worked out as much as everyone probably thought it would have.
Bobby, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bobby.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider, joined us on the Arizona Sports Line.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.